All right.
So cookbook author and journalist Mark Bickman states that 1 billion people in the world are chronically hungry and 1 billion are overweight. In America, more than 1 in 3 adults are considered to be overweight or obese, and the numbers have drastically increased since the 1950s to now. Approximately 10% were classified obese in 1950, and the CDC reports approximately 35 are classified obese now. Today I want to highlight for you the drastic change about the American Standard Diet, and I'm going to give you information about the changes by touching on 3 main points. First, I'm going to discuss the standard American diet in the past, how it is now, and lastly, how it affects us and obstructs health rather than promoting. So back then, the American diet had a traditional way of eating that consisted of 3 meals, and a snack that was usually sweetened, like tea or coffee. Meats, eggs, fruits, and vegetables, as well as dairy products were essential. And as a result, the organic movement began, like in 1930 and 1940. A lot of people had organic farms, and people grew their own food, and they ate the food that they grew. It was all a healthy balance of nature and farming. And now with livestock animals and their products were also essential. However, the USDA data indicated that the lowest meat consumption occurred in the 1930s, and the highest was reached in the recent decades. This is a graph of the meat consumption. That was in the 1930s, how low it was to like recent, 2012, the recent graph, like a drastic change. An important fact I want to point out is that the animals were raised way differently than how we were like before back then. They were actually considered probably the healthiest animal products back then than how they are now. So things started to change in the 1950s when shortcuts and fast foods became like the new normal, and all these commercials and hamburger helper was the McDonald's. Cheese was very popular back then too. Nearly 80% of all processed food in the U.S. contain genetically modified ingredients, such as artificial colors, flavors, and sweeteners. However, that didn't change the fact that Americans still continue to eat or refine processed food. Barry Popkin, professor of nutrition at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, states that we are a generation of constant eaters, not so much as grubbing uncontrollably during like family dinners, because not much people have family dinners anymore. Our SDA is consumed of 63% of fats, oil, fast food, sweets, redefined foods, and 25% is bread, meats, fish, and eggs. And sadly, 12% is only vegetable, fruits, and whole grains. So this is another graph representing how it is now. And you can see that we eat more oils and fats and fast food now. And 12% is only vegetables and fruits. So how it affects us now is that all processed foods mainly are known to cause cancer and birth defects. A quote from Mark Bickman, the journalist and cookbook, says, "Our demand for these things, not our wants, not our needs, but our wants, it drives us to consume way more calories than are good for us." In result, those calories are in foods that cause, not prevent disease. And on the other hand, some people eat less meat and more dairy, but that was more, less dairy than how much was consumed back before the 1950s. So now that I told you guys about the history and gave you guys more of an insight on the standard American diet, hoping that we can change the way that America eats now and eat more healthier.
All right, Dorothy, what did you think?
I think that overall Heidi's speech was clear. I think the message from the way we used to eat family dinners together and now the way we eat while we're obese, obviously fast food, cheaper meals. I think she had good eye contact. She would look up every once in a while and, she did that. In the beginning, she told us what she was going to be going over, and so it was pretty clear what we were going to be going over. And her visual aids were good. The only thing is I just couldn't hear her, and I think that's just because she has a soft voice. But everything else, I think overall her speech was pretty clear.
Okay. All right. I'm going to disagree with you on a couple of points, but I'm definitely going to agree with you on the last point that you made. And I think you know that it's true. You've got kind of a quiet voice. You're going to have to work at that a little bit and project more, because you're going to lull people to sleep if you're so quiet, and you got to. We're going to talk about this sense of immediacy, like I was talking about with you, because if you lay back and you're passive in the way you present the information, the audience will probably respond in kind. So it's better to, you don't have to do a dance and shout, but you got to have a little bit more variety and a little bit more energy, and definitely project more. And Dorothy said that you were looking up pretty regularly. I didn't see you looking up as regularly. Now maybe she's just looking at a different time than I am, and so she saw something different than I do. You'll have to be able to judge that from looking at the video. So that'll help you figure that out. But I think that's part of the problem also, is because you've got a quiet voice and you're looking down quite a bit, that you sometimes bury your voice a little. So that would be a way to address that. I like the quote at the beginning of the speech for attention. I thought you had some statistical information to get us going on this. I thought that was pretty good. I thought you had an excellent statement of what your purpose was going to be in the presentation. There's a pretty solid preview about where you were headed, so that was good. In the body of the speech, I could tell it's mostly organized chronologically. I didn't really hear signposts or transitions as you were moving between the points. I knew when I was in the second point because I had the visual reference that you gave us. When you got to the final point, I'm not exactly sure where that started. I think we could use a little bit more research material in here also. You make it sound like organic farming was a movement back in the 1930s, and maybe it was, and I'm not aware of it. That's possible. I think mostly people just ate the food that they grew themselves because that's where they lived at the time, and they grew their own foods. But it's when we made some changes. And you talked about cultural changes in the 50s that occurred when you mentioned processed foods, for instance, and you mentioned some products. You've got the visual there of McDonald's and Hamburger Helper and those kinds of things. Well, why is it that we changed? What was it that was happening there. I'm not quite sure what occurred. I think I know what happened, but you don't really tell us much about it. Did we suddenly decide we didn't like the food that we were eating and this seemed better, so we went to that? Or was that developed for a particular reason because things had changed in the demographics of the country, that kind of thing? I think there's a relationship there that kind of gets skimmed over, and that I kind of thought that was going to be the purpose of the speech, to talk about that, and it's only there a little bit instead of being the main focus of what you're talking about. There are a few source citations here and there, so that's pretty good. I was thinking about the visual that you had on the graph for meat consumption, and it's basically total amounts of meat that are consumed, which is not a bad piece of information, but if you're talking about our changing patterns, is it different per capita? For example, okay, the country consumes 5 times as much meat as it did 50 years ago, but how many more of us are there? That might be why we consume 5 times as much. But if there's a per capita thing, for example, the average person consumes 5 times as much meat as they did 50 years ago. That 50 years ago we consumed maybe a quarter of an ounce or a quarter of a pound or a half a pound of meat a day, and today we average 3/4 of a pound of meat a day. Then that would make a little bit more sense what's going on with the obesity issue and those kinds of things. Then I think you're tying it in together a little bit more. The pie chart that you had I thought was good, except what I needed was the one that showed what it used to be like. So here's how our food is now, and you've got it broken down into these component parts. If there had been a similar pie chart for, like you said, 50 years ago when we started, and we could see how different it was, I think that would have made your point a little bit more clear, and it would have really filled in what you're talking about. The delivery things are things that you're going to work on. That's one that we're going to working on. That's what we're going to be working on next. So I think you'll be okay. It just is going to require a little practice to get better on some of those points. The structural stuff looks like it's pretty good, and the content probably need to cite a little bit more, but you're doing okay. All right, thank you.